Look down at the center of Mexico City, and you'll find a vast concrete expanse covering over 46,000 square meters. Officially, this massive square is the Plaza de la Constitución, but almost no one in Mexico actually calls it that. They call it the Zócalo. The word Zocalo literally translates to plinth or base. In 1843, President Antonio López de Santa Anna commissioned a grandiose monument to Mexican independence, designed to sit dead center in the plaza. But the country's finances were exhausted, the construction ran out of money, and the towering column was never built. For decades, only the carved stone base sat there, completely abandoned. Over time, locals began referring to the entire plaza simply by the unfinished stone at its center, the base, the Zocalo. Today, that stone base is gone, leaving behind a perfectly flat paved surface. But that flatness is an illusion. To stand here is to stand on highly unstable ground, both geologically and historically. To understand how this space actually functions, we have to look past the empty pavement. We have to dig down, layer by layer, through the buried empires this plaza rests upon. Long before it was a Spanish colonial square, this exact coordinate was the sacred epicenter of Tenochtitlan, the Mexica capital built entirely over a lake. At the center of that island city stood the Templo Mayor. It was a colossal pyramid crowned with twin shrines, one dedicated to Tlaloc, the god of rain, and the other to Huitzilopochtli, the god of war. Together, they represented the agricultural and military engines of the empire. By the turn of the 20th century, the exact location of the temple was lost to time. In 1900, city engineers laid a brick sewer line straight through the buried pyramid. They destroyed nearly 2 meters of the structure without ever realizing what they were digging through. That blindness lasted until February 1978. A crew of electrical workers was digging near the plaza when they struck a massive stone disc. It was the Coyolxauhqui monolith, a meticulously carved 8-ton depiction of a dismembered lunar goddess. That single discovery forced the city to start tearing up colonial-era blocks to see what else was down there. Today, you can stand on a modern sidewalk and look down at the excavated steps and serpent heads of the Templo Mayor, sitting fully exposed right next to the Zocalo. Tenochtitlan remains physically present, pinned beneath the colonial pavement like a subterranean center of gravity. If the ground belongs to the Mexica, the perimeter of the plaza belongs to the Spanish. When the conquistadors seized the city, they designed this square to broadcast absolute colonial authority. They achieved that through an act of architectural cannibalism. The Spanish dismantled the Templo Mayor and repurposed the exact stones to build their new centers of power, the National Palace and the Metropolitan Cathedral. The cathedral is the largest in Latin America. Its construction dragged on for 250 years, slowly piling stone upon stone over the remains of the old empire. But there is a severe geological consequence to this design. The Spanish built their heavy stone institutions directly over a soft, muddy lakebed. Because of that immense weight, the cathedral and the entire plaza is continuously sinking into the earth. Inside the cathedral today, a giant pendulum hangs from the ceiling. Engineers use it to measure the building's severe tilt as it slowly slides into the unstable ground. The Zocalo's unstable foundation provides a literal manifestation of Mexico's superimposed history, the result of centuries of opposing empires struggling to hold the exact same patch of dirt. Look at the Zocalo from above, and you'll see a stark contrast. The edges are locked in by heavy, immovable monuments to the state, the church, and the judiciary. But the middle is a complete void, a massive, empty slab of pavement. The government tries to fill that void with highly choreographed rituals. Every morning, a military detail marches into the center of the square to raise a massive flag, physically asserting state control over the open space. Every September, that control is verbalized during the Grito de Dolores. The president steps out onto the high balcony of the National Palace, rings the independence bell, and leads tens of thousands of citizens below in a highly orchestrated shout of national identity. But this brings us back to the irony of Santa Anna's unfinished monument. Because the center of the square remained an empty pedestal, It created a spatial vacuum, and it's a vacuum that absolute state power has never been able to fully occupy. By failing to build a central structure, the government inadvertently guaranteed a perpetual tension. The empty square serves as an open invitation for the public to step into the void and challenge the authority surrounding them. When the government fails, the citizens take the square. After the devastating 1985 earthquake, state response was paralyzed, so the Zocalo became the staging ground for a massive, self-organized rescue effort. Thousands of ordinary people bypassed the government entirely, marking the birth of modern Mexican civil society. Today, taking the Zocalo is the ultimate act of political and cultural legitimacy. It operates as the country's megaphone, hosting everything from massive strikes and political protests to free concerts that pack the plaza with over 200,000 people at a time. The National Palace records this cycle of conflict and triumph in its very architecture. Inside, Diego Rivera's murals link the faces of revolutionaries and citizens to the living crowds outside, mirroring the past onto the present. The Zocalo refuses to be a static museum piece. It is a living, breathing political organism. Its meaning changes completely depending on who is standing in the center of the pavement. In 1843, Mexico tried and failed to build a towering stone monument to its own independence. But in leaving the base unfinished, the state provided something more powerful. It gave the Mexican people the perfect stage to become the monument themselves.